Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Animagma. I'm SolsetLava, and today we're not going to be talking about old school Japanese animation, but instead a new anime that just released here in the United States with a broad theatrical screening. Kimi no Na wa, also known as Your Name, directed by Makoto Shinkai, first released in Japan back in July of 2016. Your Name was met with broad critical acclaim when it debuted last year and was a massive hit in Japan, actually beating the all-time box office earnings for Princess Mononoke and coming in second only to Spirited Away as one of the highest grossing anime movies in Japan of all time. In fact, it's actually beaten Spirited Away in worldwide box office sales and has become Japan's highest grossing animated feature ever released. Because of its overwhelming success, critics have actually hailed Makoto Shinkai as the next Hayao Miyazaki, which Shinkai has humbly denied, though it does bode well for his future in animation. Now, personally, I unfortunately only have limited experience watching Makoto Shinkai's filmography. The only other work I'd seen of his was the 2002 short film Voices of a Distant Star, which was his directorial debut and made a huge splash in the anime industry because he had basically created the entire movie himself, having single-handedly done the direction, writing, production, and animation. At the time, I thought it was an impressive accomplishment, though the story and movie itself maybe didn't capture my fancy quite as much. Just this past weekend, Funimation, the American distributor for the movie Your Name, actually began a broad theatrical showing across the country for the movie, which I was able to watch just this past Friday with subtitles to boot. So, after almost 2 decades since I'd last seen a Makoto Shinkai work, how does his newest film fare, and does it live up to the hype and popularity that's followed it? Your Name is the story of 2 Japanese teenagers, a girl who lives in the countryside named Mitsuha, and a boy who lives in Tokyo named Taki. They both have frustrations in their individual lives. Mitsuha is bored of the countryside and lives under the shadow of her father, who happens to be the town mayor. Taki, on the other hand, has a busy city lifestyle and an unconfessed crush on his older co-worker. One day, Mitsuha and Taki wake up to find that they've surprisingly swapped bodies with one another, which initially results in some humorous reactions, but eventually leads to them helping each other in their individual lives. This body-swapping situation eventually becomes part of a larger overarching story related to the passing of a shooting star, and leads to a suspenseful third act as our heroes try to reach each other. I won't go into spoiler details because I do think this film in particular is more enjoyable without knowing everything going in. So what did I think of the movie? Personally, I actually found Your Name to be surprisingly enjoyable. It's a very well-paced, excellently directed story that's entertaining and engaging throughout. Young adult romance isn't uncommon to find in anime, particularly in the modern day, but Your Name treats the characters with an honesty and sincerity that feels like it's coming from more of a mature perspective, which makes the movie maybe a bit ways less annoying and aggravating maybe than other similar teenage love stories you might see out on the market. The art of the movie is also really good. The background artwork is incredibly beautiful, lushly detailed with wonderful colors and certain CG work that blends in seamlessly with the overall progression of the film. The animation also is very good, but since it's a teenage romance movie, it doesn't really set out to show any particularly incredible or action-packed animated sequences, so I wouldn't go in expecting to see out-of-this-world animation. It's just well done for what it is. The movie overall feels very polished compared to Shinkai's earliest work, and really feels like he's gotten a very mature and strong grasp for directing and pacing, as the script is tightly written and never skips a beat. Your Name definitely shows that Shinkai has really grown as a director and bodes very well for his future in animation. Now, some of you might be wondering, does Your Name live up to the hype? Particularly since some critics were hailing Shinkai as the next Miyazaki? Having seen the film for myself and given it a good bit of thought, I personally wouldn't go that far. It's a very enjoyable movie that I would recommend to people to go see, but I think a mixture of factors makes it a bit more limited in its broader impact on animation as a medium, and it may have been more popular in a trending sense as opposed to a timeless one. Some of that I think is because this movie really resonates more with young adults than a general audience. Though that said, I think it accomplishes something that few anime films are often able to do, which is to say, it rises outside of the otaku demographic and actually appeals to mainstream audiences. I think its popularity in Japan could have exploded with teen and young adult audiences like a trending fad, sort of similar to like maybe how the Twilight films were popular with a similar demographic here in the US, though I do want to stress that I think Your Name is still enjoyable for older adult audiences as well. Also, despite being a beautiful animated work, I don't feel as though the movie had to be animated in order to tell its story, which is part of why I think comparisons with Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki's works are maybe a little unfair. Makoto Shinkai's works seem to tend towards romance, and so animation is maybe more of a stylistic rendition as opposed to being an absolute necessity for the sorts of stories he tries to tell. Your Name in particular feels like a mixing of elements from existing character-driven movies and romance films, such as Freaky Friday or Serendipity, so I kind of feel like Your Name might also work just as well in a live-action adaptation. Miyazaki's films, on the other hand, they wander a lot more into the realms of fantasy and action, and I think it's harder to say that you could capture a similar experience for his movies in a live-action form. Romance movies also have a more limited target audience compared to the all-ages demographic that Miyazaki's works largely appeal to. So taking all of that into account, I don't think Shinkai's films will necessarily be as influential as Miyazaki's in the realm of animation, and instead he might ultimately be more generally remembered as a very good scriptwriter and film director. The movie isn't without its faults either. There are some moments where the characterization maybe feels a little odd, like you have to suspend your disbelief in order to enjoy certain actions and decisions that the characters make. Also, there are some aspects to the movie's plot that are emphasized during the course of the movie that kind of are left unresolved at the end, and I feel as though if those plot elements had been fleshed out a bit more, maybe there would be a better sense of closure at the end of the film. With all that said though, Your Name is an enjoyable and respectable young adult romance movie that I very much recommend if you get a chance to see it. It might not be the revelation that the hype might have been pointing towards, but it's still a charming watch and certainly something I'd be willing to revisit somewhere down the road. And that does it for this episode of Animagma. Have you seen Your Name yet? And if so, did you enjoy it too? Do you think it lives up to the hype, and how do you feel it compares to Miyazaki's films? Leave your thoughts and comments below. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you liked this episode, feel free to hit that like button, and if you really like this episode and haven't done so already, feel free to hit that subscribe button too. That's all for now. You guys take care. I hope y'all have a good one, and I'll talk to you later. Ciao.